The hidden psychology of people who always keep their house spotless. Have you ever walked into someone's home and felt something happen inside you almost immediately? Not jealousy, not even admiration, something quieter than that. Relief. The counters are clear. The sink is empty. The air feels lighter. Nothing is pulling at your attention. Nothing is silently asking to be handled. And for one small moment, your body seems to understand something before your mind does. I can breathe here. That is what makes people with spotless homes so fascinating. Because most people assume the answer is simple. They must just be more disciplined, more organized, more mature, more responsible than the rest of us. But the truth is deeper than that. In many cases, these people are not just cleaner. They have a different psychological relationship with space itself. Because this is not really about floors, dishes, or folded blankets. It is about what happens to the mind inside a certain kind of environment. It is about what order does to the nervous system. It is about emotional regulation, identity, control, relief, and the invisible conversation between your inner world and the room around you. If you have ever looked at a messy room and felt tired before doing a single thing, if you have ever been embarrassed by clutter that seemed too small to justify the amount of shame it triggered, if you have ever started cleaning, not because you felt inspired, but because something in you could not settle until the room did, that is not random, and it is not shallow. It is psychological, because your environment is not neutral. The room you live in is not just background scenery for your real life. It is constantly sending signals to your brain. And one of the most overlooked truths in psychology is that visual clutter competes for attention. Research associated with attention science at Princeton has found that clutter taxes the brain's ability to focus and tires cognitive functioning over time. That means the shirt on the chair, the unread mail, the dishes in the sink, the pile you keep meaning to deal with, the drawer you avoid opening. Your brain does not fully ignore them. Even when you are not consciously thinking about them, part of you is still registering them. They become open loops, small unfinished demands, tiny signals of not done yet. And that matters more than people realize. Because unfinished things are mentally expensive. That is one reason spotless house people often feel so different from everyone else. It is not always that they enjoy scrubbing more than you do. It is often that they feel disorder more intensely than you think. A cluttered room does not simply look messy to them. It feels loud. It feels mentally crowded. It feels like the room is making low-level demands every second they are inside it. And a clean room feels like the opposite of that. It feels like silence. It feels like space inside the mind. It feels like the body no longer has to brace itself against 10 tiny unresolved things at once. That is why a clean home can feel so emotional. Because it does not just change what you see. It changes what your nervous system has to carry. There is research pointing in that direction too. A UCLA-linked study found that in one sample, women who described their homes as more cluttered or unfinished showed a less healthy daily cortisol pattern associated with chronic stress than women who described their homes in more restorative terms. That does not prove clutter causes every emotional struggle, but it does show that the way people experience their homes is meaningfully tied to stress physiology. Now pause there for a moment. That changes the whole conversation. Because now we are not talking about neatness as an aesthetic preference. We are talking about whether your home restores you or quietly drains you. And for many people, that is intensely personal. Sometimes the people most devoted to order are not shallow, rigid, or obsessed with appearances. Sometimes they are people who discovered very early that peace does not always come naturally. Sometimes they grew up in homes that felt emotionally chaotic. Homes where moods changed without warning. Homes where criticism lived in the air. Homes where the atmosphere was unpredictable. Homes where home did not always mean softness. And when you come from that kind of instability, order can become more than a preference. It can become safety. A clear room says, nothing is jumping out at me here. Nothing is escalating here. Nothing is silently accusing me here. I know what to expect here. I can exhale here. That is why some people protect their homes so carefully. Not because they think perfection is morally superior, but because disorder costs them something real. It costs them calm. It costs them focus. It costs them the ability to fully come down. And then there is another layer beneath all of this. Control. Think about how much of life does not respond to you. You cannot control other people's moods. You cannot control whether someone understands you. You cannot control bad timing. disappointing news traffic, rejection, conflict, or uncertainty. So much of life is unstable, and when life feels unstable, the human mind starts craving one thing more than almost anything else, something it can bring back into order. That is why cleaning can feel strangely relieving, not because wiping a counter solves your life, but because for one small moment the world responds. You act. The room changes. Order returns. Your brain receives a message it has been starving for. Something is handled. That is why some people suddenly start cleaning after a stressful conversation. That is why they reorganize a drawer when they feel emotionally overwhelmed. That is why a person can be restless, heavy, mentally flooded. And then, after clearing a table or resetting a kitchen, feel that something inside them has softened. This connects to what psychology calls behavioral activation, an evidence-based approach often used in depression treatment. One reason it matters is that purposeful action can help shift a stuck emotional state by restoring movement, agency, and contact with meaningful behavior. That does not mean cleaning cures depression. It means action matters, completion matters, movement matters, and for some people, restoring order outside is one of the fastest ways to create a little order inside. Now here is where the subject becomes even more interesting. People who always keep their house spotless are not necessarily powered by discipline. That is one of the biggest myths. Very often what actually sustains a spotless home is not discipline. It is identity. It is rhythm. It is automation. Because the person who consistently resets their space is usually not asking the same exhausting question every day. Do I feel like cleaning? They are not negotiating with themselves endlessly. They are not reinventing motivation every night. At some point, the behavior became part of who they believe they are. This is what I do. This is how I close the day. This is how I take care of my environment. This is how I take care of myself. And once behavior becomes tied to identity, it becomes much easier to repeat. That is also how habits are formed. The famous 66 days finding from UCL is often oversimplified, but the useful takeaway is this: repeated behavior in a consistent context gradually becomes more automatic, and that reduces effort. That means spotless house people are often not stronger than everyone else. They are just spending less energy on the behavior because the behavior has become more automatic, and that is a very different thing. This is also why many people fail when they try to copy the result without understanding the system. They wait. The dishes pile up. The room gets heavier. The clutter becomes emotional. Then one day they attack the whole house in a burst of guilt, frustration, or panic. And afterward they wonder why they cannot maintain it. But that cycle fails because it is built on rescue. And rescue is exhausting. People who keep their homes spotless are usually not rescuing their homes. They are maintaining them. That difference is everything. Rescue feels punishing. Maintenance feels lighter. Rescue begins in shame. Maintenance begins in rhythm. Rescue drains you. Maintenance protects you. That is why the real lesson here is not be stricter with yourself. It is stop waiting until the task becomes emotionally enormous. Do not clean the whole kitchen. Clear one surface. Do not organize the entire house. Choose one visible area and protect it. Do not promise yourself a completely new life tonight. Begin with one small act of order that is humble enough to repeat, because repetition is more important than intensity, and intensity is where many people get trapped. They try to change through force, but people who live in lasting order usually did not build it through force. They built it through rhythm, through small resets, through reduced friction, through fewer decisions, through giving things homes, through doing a little before the room becomes too loud to bear. And maybe that is the hidden psychology of people who always keep their house spotless. It is not that they are better than everyone else. It is not that they enjoy chores more. It is not that they transcended human mess. It is that they discovered something many people only learn after years of overwhelm. The state of your space shapes the state of your mind. And once you feel that truth deeply enough, cleaning stops being cosmetic. It becomes care. It becomes a form of self-respect. A way of protecting your focus, a way of lowering unnecessary stress, a way of making home feel like home again. So do not begin by asking yourself how to become a completely different person. Ask something gentler, something wiser. What is one part of my environment that I can make less demanding on my nervous system? One sink, one chair, one corner, one table, one small ritual before bed. That is enough to begin. Because this was never just about a spotless house. It was always about the person living inside it, the person trying to think more clearly, rest more deeply, feel less crowded inside their own mind, and walk through their own front door without feeling immediately behind. Sometimes clean is not just clean. Sometimes clean is peace made visible.